Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Thanks for watching Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage Vault Series. The Vault Series is a series of interviews that we shot starting back in 2004, 2 years before the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum opened to the public. If you like what you see, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Thanks for watching. Today's guest, songwriter, singer, half of the group Boyce and Hart, produced the Monkees, Bobby Hart.
Well, I'm Bobby Hart, best known as half of the writing producing team of Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart. We also had a few records as artists on A&M Records, and we did 3 albums for A&M and had, I guess, about 4 or 5 chart records. Our biggest was called I Wonder What She's Doing Tonight. But we really had a good time producing other acts and writing songs for other acts starting back in the mid-'60s. New Year's Day 1958, I hit the road and came to Hollywood to make my fortune. I thought, still up until that time, I thought I was going to be a disc jockey because I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I loved music, and I knew that that's something I could do probably. And so I came over here to go to Don Martin School of Radio in Hollywood, and it didn't take long. Probably I got a job right away printing record labels because I'd learned how to be a printer from my dad, who always had printing presses in the garage as one of his many hobbies. So that worked out good. I got a job the first day I was here, and on the way to work, I'd walk to work down Vine Street, and I would see this little recording studio. It had a marquee out in front, like a movie theater, and it said, "Fidelity Records, come in and see what your voice sounds like, $10." So I mean, I would pass this every day, and it would start to grow on me, and in 2 or 3 months, I saved up, $20, $30, whatever it was, and I went in on a Saturday, and I laid down a little Jerry Lee Lewis track on the piano, and did some backgrounds, and I sang "You Are My Sunshine," and I was hooked from then on. I said, I think I can do this. I don't think I want to be a disc jockey. I think I want to be an artist. And growing up, of course, what passed for pop music when I was growing up, and talking about the early the 50s and even the early 60s, but 50s, late 40s in the 50s. I really didn't have much use for what was pop music in those times. I thought it was so soulless, and so I listened to country music basically growing up, listened to the Grand Ole Opry every Saturday night, and but I never thought of myself as a singer much until rock and roll came in. When rockabilly hit, of course, the country station I was listening to in Phoenix, KHEP, started playing Elvis and Perkins and some of the early rockabilly guys. And when I heard Gene Vincent sing "Bebop-A-Lula," I remember walking up in Oak Creek Canyon when I was vacationing one summer by myself, walking across the creek, nobody around. Then I started singing "Bebop-A-Lula," and I said, that doesn't sound too bad. I could probably do this kind of music. So that was the little first light bulb that went off in my head. So when I got to Hollywood years later, it didn't take too much for me to get sidetracked from disc jockey to artist.
When did you start writing?
It's the most transparent profession in the world because of radio. All you have to do is turn on the radio and you see what a song sounds like. You hear what a song sounds like, and all you do is have a basic analytical powers to figure out that basically you got your verses, a couple of verses, and a chorus, and maybe a release, and it's not too hard to figure out if you listen to the radio. And I had been an avid radio listener probably since I was 6 or 7 years old.
How did you get together the Boyce and Hart team?
Well, I met Tommy Boyce it's around that same time, 58, 59. He was also one of the guys that was hanging around Jesse Hodges' office, a little office at Crossroads of the World, and Johnny Cash had the office next door. It was kind of a little hotbed of young talent coming up. And Tommy was one of the guys who hung around along with Donnie Brooks and Johnny and Dorsey Burnett and John Maniscalco, who wrote all the early Little Richard stuff. And so I got to meet a lot of people that way. Tommy and I kind of became friends over a few months. My buddy who gave me the ride over here on New Year's Day '58, my high school buddy, was coming over to go to Pasadena College, and after a couple of months, he came over on the weekend to visit, and he brought with him a guy named Curtis Lee, who was his college mate. And he said, so I told Kurt that you got a record deal, and Kurt sings really good, and maybe you can help him do the same. So Kurt did do a record with Jesse, and Jesse and Tommy actually became fast friends before Tommy and I, because I was married at the time, and they were bachelors, and Tommy was living at home still in Highland Park, so they'd hang out on the weekends. Well, after about I don't know, after a few months or a year or two, Curtis was doing a show down at Long Beach Auditorium with a lot of local acts. And he got discovered. Ray Peterson was on the show, and Ray's manager and the owner of his record company, Dunes Records, Stan Schulman, was there. And he heard Kurt and thought he was really a talent. And he said, I want to sign you and bring you back to New York and make you a star, buddy. So when Kurt went back to New York, then Tommy didn't have anyone to hang out with, so he started hanging out with my wife Becky and I on the weekends, and that's when we started helping each other with our song. He still wrote his own songs, and I wrote mine, but he would help me tighten up mine. I'd help him work on his, not taking any credit. So, but it was only a few months then until Stan Schulman, Kurt back in New York, told Stan, hey, I need Tommy out here to help. You know, we need some hits, and Tommy can do it. So Stan then brought Tommy back to New York, which resulted in Tommy and Kurt writing 2 hits for Kurt called Pretty Little Angel Eyes and Under the Moon of Love. First top 10 Boyce and Hart was Come a Little Bit Closer by Jay and the Americans. So we had some success, and then I got the chance to go work with Teddy Rundell. So Teddy, in addition to being partners with Don in the publishing company, South Mountain Music, he was an artist, and he worked Vegas like 12 weeks on, 12 weeks off, and so I went on the road with Teddy. So we'd be in New York 12 weeks writing in this little $21 a week room, and then we'd be in Vegas with everything was great, you know, with great food and glamour and the showgirls, and everything was great. So it was a real good balancing act. But on one of those trips, when we were working the Thunderbird in Vegas, in the meantime, Teddy had cut a hit record with Little Anthony and the Imperials called On the Outside Looking In, and they followed that with Going Out of My Head. And Going Out of My Head kind of peaked while we were on one of these tours in Vegas, and so Teddy said one night between shows, he said, we got to go up and write some songs for Little Anthony. I got to go back to New York and cut his next single. So on the break between shows, we went in and Teddy and Bobby Wilding, one of the other singers, and I wrote Hurt So Bad, which was my second top tenor. And I guess the next thing that happened was while I was on the road with Teddy, Tommy got signed by Screen Gems, Columbia Music. Screen Gems, Columbia Music. Screen Gems TV and Columbia Pictures had just bought the Alden music catalog, Donnie Kirshner's and company, and they took Donnie on to run the company. He stayed with it, so it became Screen Gems Columbia Music. And really, the way it happened was Tommy had a girlfriend named Susan Hudson in New York, and they'd been living together for a year or two, pretty serious. But at one point, Susan met a record legend, executive, Goldner, who owned End Records and Gone Records, and had a lot of success. But anyway, he started romancing Tommy's girlfriend, Susan. He really liked Susan a lot, and so it was kind of a dilemma for her, because he could offer a lot of stuff that this struggling songwriter Tommy Boyce couldn't offer. And so he got a good idea at one point, and he called his friend Don Kirshner up, and he said, hey, I want you to sign this kid Tommy Boyce and send him out to your West Coast office. So that's how Tommy got to California. And as soon as he did, he called me up on the road, and he said, hey, I can get you the same deal, $100 a week, and you know, they have a lot of contacts out here, because they have a motion picture company and a television company. So as soon as I could get out of my commitment with Teddy, I joined Tommy at Screen Gems in 1965. In the meantime, before I could get here, Tommy already had another 2 or 3 hits, writing with a guy named Steve Vinay. They wrote Action, which was the theme song for Where the Action Is. Oh, baby, come on, let me take you where the action. And they had written Peaches and Cream by the iCats and a couple other TV themes. So once again, he was ahead of me, but right behind him, I hit the ground running, and we started having hits. And one of the first things they sent us out on was a new soap opera that was going to be coming on NBC called Days of Our Lives. And so we met with the producers, Ted and Betty Corday, who had a lot of success with soap operas. They were older already, and they had decades of other successful soap operas, and they wanted to start this new one for NBC. So they said they had just seen Fiddler on the Roof and really liked the song Sunrise Sunset. Could we do something like that for a theme song? So Tommy and I, we were the best at we did Sunrise Sunset backwards, and just changed it around a little bit, and we thought it was pretty good, and we played it for them. They hated it, so we tried something else, and they didn't like it either. And we didn't know that Days of Our Lives was going to be on the air on NBC for 40 years. It was just another little project to us. So we said, forget those guys. They don't know what they want. So I said, I got one last idea. We'll go in this little demo studio where they got a B3 in there. And I grew up listening to my mom's radio soap operas. I'll sit down at the organ and I'll play something that sounds like soap opera music. And they took it, and it's been on the air for since 1965.
That was a good last stop.
Yeah. And then one of the next appointments we went on, because we were doing a lot of this stuff in between. Dick Clark was asking us for for themes for all the pilot shows he was doing. A lot of them, some made it on, some didn't. We were writing for whoever was coming up. But we got the opportunity to go over and meet with Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider, who were Raybert Productions, who were developing this idea to do an American Beatles on television sitcom. And so we got it, and we said, we think we can know how to do this for you. And they gave us the job, which was to write 3 songs for the pilot show: a theme song in a dance scene, and a romantic song for Davy Jones to sing on the beach when he was having trouble with his girlfriend. So we delivered those, and what we were really interested in was producing the music for the show, because we could see the potential there. But when it came time for that to happen, we worked on the show, I guess, 9 months to a year before they sold it. But once NBC was on board, and Kellogg's, the sponsors, and Yardley, and RCA Records, and everybody, it was a go. Well, at that point, then Donnie Kirshner got involved, and he came out from New York to supervise the thing. And he told us, look, guys, you guys have had some hits, a bunch of hits as writers, but you don't really have a track record as producers, so you can't produce the records. So we were crestfallen, of course. But as it turned out, they tried a number of other people that just didn't work out. They tried Mickey Most, and they tried Snuffy Garrett, and they tried Carole King and Jerry Goffin. And we're now about 3 months before the show's supposed to go on the air, and there's no record. So, of course, we're pulling at Donnie's coat-strings the whole time. And so we finally convinced him, let us go in a little rehearsal studio, and we'll go in and work up the arrangements for the songs that we've got that we think the Monkees can do. And you just come down and listen. And if you like what you hear, then give us the shot. Because, we did write the theme song, and we did, we have what we think is the concept for their sound. So that's what happened.
That was Hey Hey We're the Monkees.
Yeah. They had sold the show by the guys lip syncing to Tommy and I singing "Hey Hey with the Monkees," and
That was y'all singing
on the pilot show, and it's not the show that came out.
Oh.
But if you buy the collection on Rhino, they give you the extra the pilot show with Tommy and I singing on it as an extra cut. So we had to, I Want to Be Free and Let's Dance On. So anyway, Donnie said yes, and he would give us a shot to produce. So we went in, and then I was working with a little, what was Teddy Randazzo's trio band. When he wasn't on the road, we always came back to LA in between a lot of those times and worked local clubs. So I already was working in clubs with this group we called ourselves the Candy Store Prophets. And it was Billy Lewis on drums and Larry Taylor, who later became a founding member of Canned Heat on bass, and Jerry McGee on guitar. And Jerry went on to play years with Christofferson, and I believe he's still a member of the Ventures now and touring with the Ventures. So, and I played organ and did the vocals. So we'd be doing the clubs. So when we got the opportunity to produce the Monkees, Tommy said, let's use your guys, and we'll bring in a couple more of the guys that we know that we've been using cutting demos. And those two guys were Louis Sheldon, who was a member of a group called the Dawn Breakers, and he'd be off a lot of times on gigs, and we'd have to track him down and bring him in for demos. And then we wanted, it was just the beginning of the psychedelic guitar stuff that was coming in, and we wanted to have a little more progressive guy, so we knew a guy named Wayne Irwin. So that was the core of the Monkee tracks, and I would play keyboards when necessary, and we'd bring in an instrument or two when we needed to, or a percussionist. So we went in, and Donnie said, well, you got to take somebody who's had some experience with you. So the first sessions, he put Jack Keller with us, and the late great Jack Keller, because he'd had some, not only written a ton of hits, but had some studio experience as a producer. So we did the first tracks with Jack, and then eventually it was just Boyce and Hart producing the Monkee stuff. And near the end of the first album, we needed another song or two, and we wrote Last Train to Clarksville, and that turned out to be their first single that already was zooming up the charts before the show went on the air.
That was a great song and a great record.
Well, one of the great things about Last Train to Clarksville, of course, is that intro lick, and we worked the way we had been. We'd go into and rehearse the band first in a rehearsal studio, and we'd work out the whole arrangement and get the licks and so on before we went in the studio to save time.
And who played the guitar with them?
Louis Sheldon. And so we were in that rehearsal studio. We said, we need a Daydream Believer kind of a lick for this intro. And Louis just said, how about this one? And he played dun 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 dun. Just had, I guess he'd worked it up before. I mean, just had it in his head, and he just played it that fast, and it blew everybody away. And probably it was one of the major reasons they selected it as the first single. Just had such an infectious guitar riff, and it's just another reason, another instance of the unsung heroes, the background singers and musicians who have such tremendous contributions to those hit records. And they don't usually, unless you sit down and analyze it, you don't think about it, unless you think about, wow, whoever came up with that riff to "This Could Be the Last Time," and I remember going back to the days when I was working clubs. That's how I picked my repertoire. I would find something that had a great riff, a great guitar lick, or a great bass line, or just something. That's what made it infectious and what made it different from all those other records that were on the charts.